Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the shop. Commiserations to all you Sydney fans. Well, we made it to the grand final. At least that was done. Maybe we didn't turn up at the grand final, but we got there. Anyway, and commiserations to all the Bunnies fans who, unfortunately, we're not in the grand final next week, but never mind, next year. So, anyway, back to where we are. We're back in the shop here and we've got some stuff happening today. It'll probably be all over the place, but we'll get something done. Now, I was just reminded a moment ago, I read one of the notices on our feed, that I didn't put the screws into the box last week. Well, I did really, but I didn't do it on camera. So here we go. This is what we did last week. I cut all the rebates for the hinges here and in here. So I'll show you how I fit them today. So we'll do that first up. But I'll show you what I did during the week. I just go and bring Pammy on this one. So during the week, what we did is, the first thing I did was I fitted the hinges. So they look really, really neat when they're in there. You can see I've used Phillips head screws. So you could use those, or there are other screws that come with the, I think these ones are the ones that came with these hinges. But anyhow, there was a technique I needed to use because the screws that I used to put the hinge into the box are longer than the thickness of this piece of the top. So we had to sort of doctor the screws to actually do the job, but it still does quite a nice job. Now the other thing that I did during the week was I made this little keeper for the front of the box. Now we talked about what sort of lifter we were going to put on the box, whether we needed one or not, because we've got an overlapping lip. But we had a little bit of a chat about that, and we come up with the idea that we put the little keeper on and make it the same material as the top of the box. We also did the same with the draw pull. Now the draw pull and the little keeper on the top, I showed you how to make the draw pull. I just modified it a little bit to make the lifter at the top by cutting it down and then doing a little bit of hand carving to actually get it to shape to right. So that took a little bit of effort, but it made the difference. So it looks quite nice. And I think the discussion last week was all about 35 millimeters or 40 millimeters. It really doesn't matter so long as we get something that looks uniform across the box. So that's the look of the box. Okay, so with the lid and all that fitted. Now, it didn't take a whole lot to get them fitted, because once you cut your rebates to fit your hinges, everything just falls into place basically. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to fit the hinges to the other box. Put this one out of the way for the moment. And bring this one into focus. So this is the box, this is the one that I did last week where I showed you how to fit everything. So this is what we did. We got the hinges to fit in nicely, like so. And I haven't touched this since last week, so everything should be still okay. And that's going to fit into there. The easiest way to do it is just pop it on top and just push it down, because it does fit. And they just pop in like so. So all I'm going to do now is I'm going to screw those into place. Oops, I don't want that to fall off. So this is how I go about it. just a matter of pushing that into the right spot. And it's important that you do this in an order, in a row process. It's not right up. That's better. You can see they're quite tight. Actually, I might need to do a little bit of relief on that one. Get the chisel out. Just catching at that end. Just take a little bit out of there. You might find that'll fit a little better now. There we go. As you can see, sometimes you need to do that little bit of relief. Oh, I meant to mention too today, I said last week, we talked about, I'll get the router bit out, actually, let's see if I can find it. We talked about this router bit. This is something that I needed to bring up. This is the CarbiTool TSRW 8mm. Now, the router bit itself is 8mm, which is what I cut the rebate with. The problem with this is that it's an 8mm shank, which means you need an 8mm collet reducer, which means another piece to add to your kit. And as per a small piece that you don't often use, quite often you lose it. You can't find it. It's just another tool. So what I've done is I asked CarbiTool to actually reduce the diameter of the shank down to 1/4 so that I could use it with all the other tools that I have, because most of the router bits that we have are either 1/4 or 1/2 inch. Now, since then, Jim Carroll got onto me and sent me an email to say that he has access to 8mm router bits, but they have a 1/2 inch shank. Now, the 1/2 inch shank, that's fine. For most people who have the larger routers, that's fine. But if you have a small router, if you're using a trimmer router to do this sort of thing, you don't have a 1/2 inch collet on a trimmer router. So that might not work for you, but you can use it on the bigger routers, and it would still mean that you don't have to go buying an extra piece. So think about that when you purchase a router bit. And I noticed that fine box making hinges, where you buy hinges from in the UK, they are now selling an 8mm router bit, but it has an 8mm shank as well. So, and the thing about theirs is, because you're only using, and this is what they say, because you're only using a very small amount of it, because you're only working with the thickness of the hinge, you're only using 2mm of it, so they've shortened the router bit. Now, that might not work depending on the table that you're using, I should say, not wearing, but using. So think about how you're going to go about this. I find that cutting the larger TSRW 8 down to 1/4 worked, but it was expensive to get it cut down, because as per normal, engineering is very expensive. So enough of that. So now I have these fitting, and they're flush on the top, which is quite nice. So all I need to do now is drill a hole. Now, I could get a bradawl and sit that in the centre of that. Now, being cedar, it's quite soft, and I can create a little hole. Now, if I've got it out by a fraction, you're going to find that the screw may sit up. This little gadget here has a drill bit in a countersunk tip. You can see that there, and that sits in the it's sprung loaded, so you can pull it out and you can see the depth of the drill. Now you can see that that goes quite a long depth. We don't need to go that far because we've only got a thin board to work with. So all I do generally is I start my screw hole, make sure you're vertical, just a little hole, not a very big one. And you probably won't be able to see those holes there. Whoops. I just want to start those. Now, one of the problems that you have when you're using brass screws is they often break. And so what we're going to do, you can see here I've got a steel screw. When you buy the Brousseau hinges, you'll find that it comes with this steel screw. You can use that steel screw to actually cut yourself a thread. Just by doing that. Sit this one in here, cut myself a thread. That makes it easier for the screw to go in.
That would be particularly good with hardwoods, wouldn't it? Really dense timbers.
Yeah, as Pammy was just saying now, with hard, dense timbers, this is a technique that you want to perfect, and that way we can put the screws in. Now, the screw is going to be too long. You can see, if I put that in there, you can see that I'm going to actually go all the way through. I don't want to go all the way through. So, this is what I do with it. I've cut my thread. I have a pair of pliers. Let's go over to my sander. Grab myself a pair of pliers and just put the screw in like so. Just hang on to it. Now I need to take probably that much off it. You can see now I've shortened the screw down. Now if I put that in there now, it's not going to reach all the way through. So having already cut the thread, one of the problems of having big punchy fingers is holding the screw steady. Okay, so that one looks quite nice. Do another one. You can see the advantage of actually cutting that thread beforehand. I think I need a second pair of pliers, or I need somebody with very thin fingers to hang on to it while I screw it in.
Yeah, but I'm already holding the camera.
Oh, Pammy's already holding the camera, so she can't do it. Got it. Okay, so we just head the screws, just make sure the screws are right. Just line them up with along the, and that looks quite nice. Okay, so it actually looks very, very nice. I don't know if I cut the thread in these ones, so I'll just check and see that I've done it. You can see the advantage of having a decent sized screwdriver with a hand. When you've got big hands like this, a little screwdriver with a handle like that doesn't work very well. Yeah. So you need to have reasonable sized tools and handles on tools. We can do. Take the head off another one. My other two screws. Part of the reason of drilling the hole for a start and then cutting the thread is you don't want to be pushing the fibres through the front of the box. If you've got it already cut, it's not going to do that. Head my screws. The fibres at the end of the hole have to be just a little bit of space between the fibres and the end of the screw, particularly when you've got a blunt screw. You don't want to be pushing little step-ups. And there we have it. This one's just a little bit long because I've just done exactly what I said I wasn't going to do, and I've just pushed the fibres out a tiny little bit. They will push back because they're on the edge. That's not a problem. I might just shorten that screw a little bit more. Okay, now time to fit onto the box. Pretty straightforward fitting onto the box. So my first hole, and this hole here, cut a thread. I like to do these things by hand. I try to sort of avoid using mechanical a screwdriver for small things like this. If I use an electric drill, there's always the problem that you're going to snap the screw off. And if you do that, At least you've got a little bit of control this way. If you snap the screw off, you've got a major operation to just remove it. And a lot of damage. You can see that steel screw actually does the job quite nicely. You'll see the steel screw is exactly the same size. If you just focus in on that, Pammy, you can see the steel screw is exactly the same size as the brass one that we're going to fit. Okay, so just making sure that they're both the same size, and that way you don't have any drama. If you have a steel screw that's bigger than you need, you're going to find the hole will be too big for the screw that you're putting in, and it won't cut a thread, it'll just cut a bigger hole. Oh, look at that, works. Okay, now just going to take this one out. It's a bit tight, but that's okay. Okay, now the reason I've done that is so that I can access it with the drill without pushing the lid away and doing some damage to your fitting of the hinge to the lid. Cut myself a thread. Remember last week when I was talking about patience? This is where you need a fair bit of it.
Skip Flory just said the same thing.
How you going, Skip? Haven't heard from you for a while.
And also, Dr. George asked, isn't there a depth limiting adjustment on that little router bit that you had? The one that countersinks the hole?
It's called touch, Doc. You need to have a bit of feel and touch about fitting it and fitting screws. And that comes with practice.
And no, it doesn't have an automatic.
And no, it doesn't have an automatic.
Not this one.
Not this one. Skip answer. Okay, just want to show you what's happened here. I said earlier about making the screws shorter so that we didn't come through the top. If you have a look down on here, what's happened is I've actually pushed that edge of the end of the screw has actually pushed the fibres out, which I was just talking about. And so that has left me with a little bit sticking out. It actually hasn't created a hole or anything, but what I did then was I put a bit of glue on it, and now I'm just going to push all that fibre back at the end of my screwdriver, and I will sand that over. And as you can see, there's a little mark there, but that's not going to show up once I've sanded it and the glue has dried. So I'm just gluing all the fibres back in place so that when I put the screw in this time, it's not going to come out. One of those little repair things that happen occasionally. Looking pretty good. So just put the screws back in. So those pudgy fingers again. Hit the screws. I'm only going to put the bottom one in this time. I'll leave the other one until that glue dries completely and sand it off, which will take a few minutes. I'll just put this one in here and that will actually hold the thing in place. And there we have it. A nicely fitting lid, which looks really nice. What I have to do as well, I have to round over the edges of this one here as well. Well, I might do. We'll make a decision on that when the time comes. But anyway, that's how we fit the lids. Okay, so back to where we were going to start off today. Which was, I'll put that one aside. Come back to this one here, and what we're going to do is I'm going to make a support in here. Now this is revision because I've done this so many times now, and there are people who keep asking me how I go about it because they missed parts of what I did initially. So going over it is not such a bad thing. That it'll help you pick up smaller things that that will probably make your life a little bit easier. So we'll go through that anyway to begin with. So what we want to do is I want to make in the bottom of here, you'll see in the bottom of the drawer, I've got a partitioning. Now the partitioning in this one here, I'm going to have to modify it a tiny little bit because it has a tendency to do that. And I'd prefer it to sit like that. So I'll get back to you with the modification because I haven't decided as to how I'm going to go about it yet, but we will eventually get it. I don't want to glue it in, basically because we should be able to remove it to clean it. And we still have, you know, nice little compartments. Small one for something, little rings or something like that, bracelets, you know, you can make it up as you go. Like I said, when we started this, it's going to be one of those agricultural sort of setups where we work on things slowly, and we make it up as we go along, and that's what we're doing at the moment. Now, when I did this, I should have done this one as well, but we didn't, and so now it's the time to do it. So we'll have a little play with that. It's actually been good that we didn't do it then, because now I can think about what we're going to do in here. Now remember, we made an error right early in the piece by cutting that rebate in there when it should have been on the bottom. But I fixed it by putting an inlay in it, a nice white inlay, and it shows up when you open the box. So when you open the box, you get this nice little white inlay around the inside of the box, which matches bits and pieces on the tray. So things start to sort of come together, and the inlay around the inside of there matches the inlay around the top of the box. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is we're going to build, and I've already got my material cut, we're going to build a support for a tray. So it's going to have two of these in here, one in there and one in there. And then with this piece of material, I'm going to put a divider in between the two. Now the divider between there will actually support that. It will hold it in place. It will give you two separate compartments. It's going to be the same thickness, but I've made it out of a wider piece of material for a reason. I'll show you that as we go along. So the first thing we need to do is find the center, because I just want to do two halves. I don't want to do anything elaborate like doing 2 or 3 compartments or anything like that. It's just going to be 2 halves in the bottom. So I need to find the center of that, and I want to dovetail the piece between it. Okay, so we're just going to make a H. It's way too wide, of course, but we're just going to make a H. So what I need to do is I need to dovetail that into there. So I need to find halfway, and then we need to cut a dovetail in each of those. So we've got a little sliding dovetail. So my first thing is to find halfway. Shift this out of the way because we don't need that. So I have 276. 135, 138. I think that's right. Let's check it. Gosh, I got something right for once. I don't profess to be any sort of mathematician. That's my halfway. Okay, and now I need to, now the router bit I'm going to use to cut my dovetail is my H10 router bit, and it's 6 millimeters from there to there. So if I have 3 millimeters either side of here, this is for my setup. Okay, so put that in the right place. So that's going to be my setup. I need to go from there to there and from there to there. So I'm going to cut into that in the middle. So setting up for that. Oh, incidentally, I always say to you, make sure, and I'll show you with this one, I can show you with this one, scrub the excess Make sure your bearing's working properly. It only takes a few minutes to do this, or a couple of seconds. Very important, little bit of oil. Before you start.
Is that called setting yourself up for success?
It is. Setting up for success. Is that a comment that somebody's got there? Who's underlined that?
No, just me.
Derek. Good morning, Derek. Okay, now we set our height. Now I'm only doing this by eye. You don't need to, unless you have a particular reason for a measurement here. I'm only setting that up about halfway. Now my piece of material is, or the piece of timber is 7mm thick. I quite often use 7mm around those parts, gives it plenty of support and so forth. So now I need to cut through there. So what I'll need is a fence. Now this may work, it may have to go to a bigger fence. Let's see what happens. I may be able to get a clamp on that. If I can't, I'll have to go to a different fence. Oh yes. It's important that you get this right if you want to get it in the middle. I've got that set up. You can see I'm up against the fence. If you can come around, you can just see where that's sitting. So what I need now is a push block. So I can use a piece of offcut and I can just push that straight through like so, and the push block will actually support the timber. This one here is not very good. Let's try a different one. I might just cut a piece off this, so ears on everybody. I'm just going to use my drop saw. Nope, that's not going to work. I have to find something else. What I want is something to support the piece of material. So what that's going to do is going to support the piece of material as I push it through there, and it's going to stop any blowout that might occur here. So it's just a matter of pushing it straight through. If I put one behind the other, I'll get them both in the same spot. Like so. And I can just push that straight through there. Okay, so ears on everybody. You can see where that's come through the piece of timber. It's cut through there, and it's given a nice clean cut at the back of there. So now I have a dovetail in there. I need to tidy that up a little bit. So a little bit of sandpaper just to take the edge off and the furry stuff off.
Cole, that oil that you use
Yep.
to keep the slurry, that's camellia oil, isn't it?
That's correct, yes.
Yeah. So Skip was just asking about it.
We buy that, Skip, we buy that from Japanese Tools here in Australia. But I'm sure you can get camellia oil in the US. If you can't find that, the oil that I usually use is just ordinary sewing machine oil, and I imagine you can get it from a department store in the US. It's just very simple, very loose oil, so that it's it gets into the bearing itself. Okay, so now I have my two pieces here. Let's focus down here, Pammy. What I need to do now is I need to cut a dovetail on the end of this piece of material that will fit into that, same in there. But first of all, I need to get a length at least. So this is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to take the hinges, the lid off my box. There's a reason for this. Now here's where I get my measurement from. If I fit my piece of material in here, clamp it in place, the other one in the other side. Just got to make sure I've got them exactly the same. And by having that there, I know they're going to go down onto the bottom. I can now get a measurement from the inside of that dovetail to the inside of that dovetail, and it is 170 millimeters. So my piece of material that I'm going to end up cutting, I will cut to 170 millimeters. Now I'm going to choose, I'll just leave that there. Do not change the setting on your router bit at this stage. So my piece is going to be 170 millimeters, so I'm going to cut it to there. And as you can see, So that's the length of my piece of material. That piece there. I've got a bit of scrap left over. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut my dovetails on one end, all right? Now, I've got a whole heap of material left over, and what I can do is I can do all my testing, keep docking it off until I get to that size. So I'm going to start on this end, and I'm going to cut myself a dovetail through there. So what I need to do is change my fence. You'll need to come around this side. So I have a different fence here. This fence has a cutout in it that the dovetail bit will fit in there. Okay, so it's in there because I want to recess the router bit at least 3/4 of the way into the piece of timber. Got pockets here, I should use them, I suppose. What am I like? Now, if you want to make life easy for yourself, and I haven't done it, my piece of material is 7mm thick. If you want to make life really easy for yourself, make this 6mm, which is the same as the top of the router bit. And what I'm doing here is I'm just adjusting so that I get a small cut. And remember, we're just doing a test at this stage. I'll just put that clip on there. Need a small push block. And so all I'm going to do is I'm going to feed that across there, turn it around, do the same again. So ears on everybody, wherever I put mine, there they are. And so what I've done there is I've cut myself a dovetail on the end of my piece of material. All I need to do now is see if it fits. And I can tell you right now it's not going to fit very well. It's way too much. I've cut too much off it. And this is the beauty of having more material than you need, because now I can just dock that off and redo it after resetting. So I just dock that off. So ears on everybody. And I can do that as many times as I like. I've taken too much off, so I have to lessen, bring my fence in a little bit. That should be it. I'll give it another try. And I do this as many times as I need to. So ears on. Still a little bit too much, so I'll dock that off again. Readjust. Ears on. Again. So now I have a perfect fit. So it's just a matter of readjusting and making sure everything fits spot on. So now I need to cut my piece of material. Now I don't need to cut that end already, I've already done one. So I'm just going to measure along here, 170, and cut that piece off and then just do the other end. .70, so I'll dock that. Ears on, everybody. And now it's just a matter of cutting my dovetails on the other end. Ears on. Okay. Just take the furry stuff off. Those little bits tend to interfere with the fit occasionally, so it's always a good idea to get rid of them. One bit. And there's my second bit. I'm not going to push them all the way in because now what I want to do is I want to cut this down so that it's the same height as the smaller pieces. So let's just pull those off. You can see they fit quite nicely. I need to get a piece, and you can see the piece of timber that I've used. You'll see there's a mark along here, it's a fault in the timber, right? So I don't want that bit. What I'm going to use is this piece in the bottom here. So what I need to do is dock myself a piece off the bottom that thick. Now I've got plenty, if I make a mistake in that, I've got plenty to actually make another one if I need to. Or I just happen to have another box that I need one for, and it's the same size. And so I don't need that on there anymore. I'm not going to get the tray made today. I thought I would. There's only a couple of minutes left in the show, but we'll... so ears on, everybody. Just needs a bit of a tidy up. Let's see if it fits. Well, look at that. Now I need to push that down, but I won't do it just yet. I don't want to go pushing and shoving until after I'll glue that in. I know it's going to fit. You can see it's quite snug. So it's not going to move around anywhere, but it will give support for the tray once we glue that together. So let's get a little bit of glue out here. Incidentally, I sanded all of these pieces. They're all nicely sanded to fairly fine grade, so I've done that beforehand. Sorry, I was just reading something there. Derek, you've got to be a bit more adventurous, mate. Give it a go. Give it a go, I always say. Experiment. A little bit of glue in here. You don't need much. Wipe off the excess. It's not as if this is going to go anywhere after you've fitted it, so okay. I think I'm going to have to give this a little tap. That one's gone in. This one's not going to go in very well. So I don't often do this. One of my pet hates is using a mallet to fit dovetails.
That's not a hammer. That's a full-blown hammer. You've got better mallets than that.
I'm getting in trouble here because I've used a hammer instead of a mallet. And there's my H unit, and that will fit into here, and that will be the end of our show today. So obviously I've got another show to do to fit I just love the way it just slips straight in. Look at that. And there's my divider in the middle. Look at that. Now if I measured that, I would probably find, because I was reasonably accurate. The distance from the edge to the outside of that is 141.5. And I've got exactly the same on the other side. So it actually went straight in the middle, so it's really fine. So that'll be it for today. We didn't get very far, unfortunately. I'd forgotten about the screws and putting the screws in the hinge, in the lid, but anyway, we got them in and we've got everything sorted, so we're all good to go now. So next week, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a tray. Now, I won't finish the tray next week, but what we'll do is, is I'll build the tray, we'll glue it all together, I'll put it aside, and we'll go on with sanding. Now, next week, we will be looking at a finish that I've just come across. Now, this finish has been around for many, many years, and I've been in the industry for many, many years, and I'd never heard of it. So maybe I didn't do enough research. But anyway, we've come across a new finish, and I'm going to do a few little demos with it and show you exactly what it's like, and we'll have a just a little session on using a finish and how I go about testing that finish. So because it's a new one that I've not used before, through the week I'm going to have a little play with it, figure out how it works, and then I'll pass it on to you guys, and you can make up your own mind as to whether you use it or not. So it's all Australian made, it's all organic, and that's what I'm told, but I'll let you know next week. So have a good week, everybody, and I will catch you all hopefully next Sunday when it's nice and sunny again.